When looking through all of the available JRPGs on the Nintendo Switch, you run into so many games, it'd be almost impossible to have one video detailing all of the great ones to buy. But what I wanted to do in this update video for 2024 was add into the list, in addition to going over some of the best big JRPGs that you should check out on the Nintendo Switch if you haven't already done so. Now, with the Nintendo Switch 2 coming up, obviously, there's going to be a lull of bigger RPGs, JRPGs coming to the platform. So I wanted to run it down for the new owners out there, and of course, go over it for people who missed out on some of the best RPGs on the platform. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. This isn't in any actual numerical order. I've just got 30 big ones, and it's just some B-roll of other great JRPGs. And we're gonna go over them one by one here. Now, starting out, number 30, let's talk about Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. This is a remaster slash re-release of the 2021 Nintendo Switch RPG, but now it's available and it's coming to everything at this point. But the Vengeance version is going to have a ton of updates and additions that make the experience better across the board. You have a brand new story that's around 80 hours of extra content in there. You've got all new characters that you can use as well, new demons, new fusions, new combat options and abilities, new areas and locations. So many different quality of life options. It's going to be hard to even go over everything. Actually, I don't have the time to go over everything. So Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance took a game that was already good and just made it way better. Absolutely one of the big JRPGs that you need to check out on the Nintendo Switch or other platforms that it's on. Next up, let's get into a game called Live Alive. This is an old school game that released on the Super Nintendo only in Japan, and they remade it in Unreal Engine 4 HD 2D remake, and you have a number of different characters over the course of history, in the future, in the present, in the past, and all in between. And essentially you have a common enemy or thing that all of them deal with in their time, and then they all meet up at one point to take care of this entity. And it's a very well crafted story and very advanced for a game that came out back in the 90s for sure. When it comes to what it does from a gameplay perspective, how it shifts things around, it's pretty nuts what they've done here. I really enjoyed the graphics in the game. The music's fantastic. Live Alive is a perfect fit for anybody looking to get into an RPG, but not really spend a million hours in one. So Live Alive, definitely a game that you should check out. Now, another title that I want to go over is The Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero. And honestly, you can put a lot of the Legend of Heroes games on the list. The Switch has a bunch of them, so I highly recommend a lot of the different Legend of Heroes games. But Trails from Zero is a fantastic title. The combat systems are so tight in the Legend of Heroes games. The music is good, the writing is good, the story is good. There are so many positive things that I can say about the Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero. I think what took me aback was just how complex, but at the same time easy it was to grasp the battle system when it comes to what they do. I really love that about this game. So The Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero, if you're looking for a great classic RPG brought back and made a bit modern to put on the Nintendo Switch anywhere that you want, that has a beefy campaign, a lot of side quests, a lot of good story beats, and great characters, Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero is your game. And I want to talk about another title here, and that is Octopath Traveler. This game came out back in 2018 on the Nintendo Switch. Now it's pretty much on all platforms, but it's great to play portable with HD Rumble. I think those things really impressed me with this game. You have 8 different travelers that kind of all have their own individual and unique stories that are fun to go through. There's a ton of secret areas and super weapons. This is a classic old school Final Fantasy style of RPG, made a bit different when it comes to what those games did and what this one does. I love the music in the game, and the battle system is so much fun. Being able to charge up points, then unleash on your enemies. Octopath Traveler, absolutely a game that has a unique HD 2D type of style. It's a lot of fun to play. It's got a great story, cool cast of characters, great special abilities and weapons, and absolutely should be a game that you check out on your Nintendo Switch if you haven't done so already. And the next game that I want to talk about is a classic game. I wanted to have modern games on here, but also a few classic games, so you will be seeing that, and that's Final Fantasy VII. I think that Final Fantasy VII is fantastic for a number of reasons. A lot of new fans have picked up the Nintendo Switch system, and Final Fantasy VII was truly one of the 3D RPGs to really break it massive here in the West when it released on the PlayStation 1. And the Nintendo Switch is the first Nintendo system to actually get Final Fantasy VII. So I do think that it's very important. It's one of my favorite RPGs of all time, but this version of Final Fantasy VII is from the PC, so it has all of the updated features when it comes to speeding up the battle system, when it comes to the slightly enhanced visuals over the original, when it comes to a lot of the quality of life options that have been added in to make this a very enjoyable experience. And on top of that, being able to play Final Fantasy VII anywhere that you want. I'm one of those believers that Final Fantasy VII, the original, is better. That's out on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 plus PC. So for me, I'm old school. I love me some old school Final Fantasy VII. And if you're somebody new that's never played it, there's still a lot of gamers out there. I highly recommend checking it out. It's got a cool ATB system, has got great characters, fun battle system, a lot of secrets as well. And I think that the writing and everything really still holds up even to this day. So you can't really go wrong with this mega blockbuster back from the late 90s or so. So absolutely check out Final Fantasy VII if you can. Now, if you're enjoying this video, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. Now let's go ahead and jump right back into it here, guys. We've got the 25th game, The Legend of Heroes Trails to Azure, another Legend of Heroes games. But once again, guys, I know these games can be kind of hard to follow because you have to really understand or know what's happening in some of the other games. But I will say this, it's not too bad to get caught up. I'm actually working on doing that to get caught up with some of the newer Legend of Heroes games and some of the games that are finally coming over to Nintendo Switch or being brought over to more platforms. And once you do that, it actually isn't too bad to play. Plus, the gameplay is top notch, so you're going to be enthralled when it comes to the gameplay. Trails to Azure is just as good as Trails from Zero, if not better, when it comes to what it does. You have your cast of characters returning. You've got some great things when it comes to the story. Once again, very, very well done. A lot of continuity if you know what's going on in the Legend of Heroes series. But I just love the combat in this game, and I just love the combat in these games. I think they think of unique ways in order to keep you, or at least every battle more like it, very fun to play through, level up, get new skills, get new abilities, do your special attacks. It's just super fun to go through. And these two Legend of Heroes games, I've had a ton of fun playing them over the bit that they've been out. I just need to get into all the different Legend of Heroes games that I've been watching videos on and everything. But Legend of Heroes can't go wrong getting into the series, and I highly recommend Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero and Legend of Heroes Trails to Azure. Now, next up, let's talk about Neo, The World Ends With You. This is an awesome follow-up to the original The World Ends With You, and this franchise might be a little bit on life support at this point, considering Neo, The World Ends With You didn't do too well, at least from what we understand it didn't. But that doesn't mean that it's not one of the big JRPGs that you should check out. It's an action RPG, and it's got a really cool mechanics and battle system that uses these different badges that give you abilities. You have multiple characters that you can pick from, swap in and out. They have all different powers and different things that they can do individually as well. And the battles are just a ton of fun to do. Plus, the story is really well done. The art style is cool, and the music is unique when it comes down to it. But I love the Shibuya setting. I love what they've done overall with the combat. I think that they've improved it from what we got from The World Ends With You. I know not everybody feels the same way, but I do think that it is a nice and improved battle system. And I think that it's easier to play at times when it comes to just playing, because you don't have to worry about having two screens like the original, and you don't have to worry about those motion controls when it comes to the Switch version, because the original on the Switch definitely had some control issues. So for me, Neo, The World Ends With You is an absolute great game to play. You should definitely check it out on the Nintendo Switch if you can. Next up, I want to get back into some of the classics that are on the Nintendo Switch and a series that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is Collection of Mana. You get 3 different Mana games. The original, which is called Final Fantasy because they didn't change the name back then, but yeah, it's called that. And then you also get Secret of Mana, which is Seiken Densetsu 2, and Seiken Densetsu 1 was the original. And then you get Seiken Densetsu 3, which also has a remake, Trials of Mana, that I had in my B-roll footage for the beginning. That's also a great JRPG that you guys should check out. But yeah, you get the original game, which some people do like the original more than the remake just because of the style and just the charm, whatever. Everybody has their own differences and what they like and dislike. But for me, I love Secret of Mana, and I think that this is one of the best ways to play it. It's pretty much a perfect port from the game on the Super Nintendo. Everything is retained, and it's not like that ridiculous remake that they made for the PlayStation Vita and the PlayStation 4 a number of years ago. I love the original here, so that's one of the big reasons to buy this game. But Seiken Densetsu 3 is also a very nice thing when it comes to getting all these games in one, and you really want to explore the origins of the Mana series with Vision of Mana coming out very soon here. So for me, Collection of Mana, very fun to play through, great action RPGs, a lot of really cool graphical tricks that they use on the Super Nintendo and even the Game Boy with the original game. And I love the characters in the game. I think the characters are one of the best things about the Mana games, and the style. The combat's always fun. It's always kind of bubbly and cheerful, but has a very dark story behind it. So Collection of Mana absolutely deserves to be on your list on games to check out. Next up, let's discuss another classic game, but made way more modern, and that is Star Ocean: The Second Story R. This is a kind of like HD 2D remake, but not quite, of a PS1 game that had elements of 2D and 3D built into it. So it's a very complex game when it came out back on the PS1, and it's very interesting to see it here on the Nintendo Switch, but this is exactly what they should do for PS1 games. If there is a blueprint to how to bring back PS1 games, this is it right here, because it looks and runs fantastic. It's a great game. It's got a lot of cool supers and attacks. You have 2 different campaigns that you can pick through and different things happen on them. And I love what they've done overall with the visuals and the music, the combat, quality of life options. It's so fun to be able to play this anywhere that you want. I played the original back then, but I didn't really play too much. I didn't have a PS1 when it came out, and I only got to play it limited wise whenever I got to borrow my friend's PS1 when he went overseas during the summer breaks. So it was super cool to be able to pick up this game on the Nintendo Switch with updated visuals, with updated art, with quality of life options, and to be able to experience it because it looks and plays just so great. So it was awesome to be able to get this game. I highly recommend Star Ocean: The Second Story R, especially if you can get a physical copy of that style of game. So absolutely check out that one as a big JRPG on the Nintendo Switch. Next up, we're going to talk about Astral Chain. This is one of my favorite games of all time, and I wanted to talk about it even closer to the beginning of the video because this game is just so good. I get giddy anytime that I have to talk about it, or anytime that I do talk about the game, because it's just so good. Now, it's more of an action game than it is RPG, but there are so many layers of RPG stuff, JRPG things in here. I had to include it. My favorite thing about this title, like I've said multiple different times, is that there are the legions in the game. The legions are essentially your party members. They each specialize in one different thing. You have an archer, you have a dog with fast attacks, you have a standard legion, you have a big sword legion that can protect and do big damage, you've got a gun legion, you've got a macho man puncher legion. There are so many cool different things in this game, and I love it. I love the fact that each of these legions have their own skill trees and leveling up, and you can get different skills in order to exploit what they do. If you really like a certain legion, you can kind of focus in on that, or you like a certain different ones, you can focus in on those, but you have access to all your legions whenever you want when you're out there. I love the graphical style in this game, Ghost in the Shell, kind of a dark anime type of style in the game, but I love the music as well. The music is fun, and I think that the gameplay is what shines the most. The story necessarily isn't the best, but I enjoyed it, but I think that all of the content in this game, it's a full, complete game, and that's what I love as well. There is no extra DLC, no microtransactions, no none of that. Once you beat the game, you've got extra content that's unlocked afterwards. But beating the game, man, that final boss was crazy. But for me, Astral Chain is a game that absolutely everybody needs to play on their Nintendo Switch. To me, it's essential if you love JRPGs, action JRPGs. This game is all of that and then it's some. So I implore all of you guys to go out there and check out Astral Chain. I know I've talked about it a lot if you're somebody that's been on this channel, but this game should be selling 2, 3, 4 million units, not where it's at about 1.3, 1.4 million units. So absolutely go out there and pick up Astral Chain. Next up, I want to talk about Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. This is a collection of the first Final Fantasy game all the way through to the 6th Final Fantasy game. And for me personally, Final Fantasy VI, which was originally 3 here in America, was one of the best things that I've ever played in my life, because Final Fantasy VI, along with other RPGs at the time, but especially Final Fantasy VI, helped me have a long-lasting love for JRPGs. Final Fantasy VI in this Pixel Remaster is done so well. It's got a great story, cool combatants and characters to use. It's got fantastic pacing, and I think that it's ultimately one of the games that when you play through and you start reading the dialogue and you start going through the story and what happens in this game with the maniacal villains that they have, you start realizing how creative and inventive developers had to be back then with limited time and resources, because a lot of these games were created with not much of a team size, and they had to get it done in a year or two. So Final Fantasy VI really makes me appreciate that. But you can even go back and play Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and find really cool things about each of these games in terms of how Square Enix made their RPGs back then. So I highly recommend Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. I think it's phenomenal and it does so many great things. And yes, old school RPG, but the combat and gameplay still feels super fun to play, especially, like I said, with Final Fantasy VI on here. So Pixel Remaster, you get a lot of games, get a lot of content, and a lot of fun. All right, next up, we're going to talk about a game that recently came out as of the time that I'm recording this video, and that is Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door. Now, I played the original back 20 years ago, but I completely forgot when it comes down to the game. So it's been a joy to go through and play Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. I love the different characters in the game. I like the Metroidvania style of stuff too, to where you can come back after you get a different character that has a certain ability and get to different areas and uncover different secrets to be able to upgrade your characters and your party members. I love the pacing of the game as well. There's a few weird and quirky things, but overall the battle system is super fun. I love how it's active, to where you have to actively play defense, press the button at the right time. There are different button prompts based on what moves you want to do with certain characters, and it's just overall a great remake of a game that already looked really good. The only downside with those awesome looking graphics is 30 frames per second instead of the 60 that the game originally ran at on the GameCube. So I wish that they actually maybe made that 60 frames, but at the same time, it's a completely stable 30 frames, and it looks phenomenal on the Nintendo Switch OLED. It really pops, it's vibrant, and the writing, for it being 20 years old, somehow the writing is better than most games that come out in today's days. So I really love what I played with Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. Absolutely one of those big JRPGs that you need to play on the Nintendo Switch. Now, next up, we're going to talk about Fire Emblem Engage. This is a game that I truly love, despite it being a little bit weird when it comes to the art style for some, and maybe off what Fire Emblem is about. The gameplay is all good. It's exactly the direction that Fire Emblem needs to go to. I absolutely love the quality of life options, the heads-up UI and display. And for a big Fire Emblem fan like myself, seeing all the different Fire Emblem heroes from the past come together to kind of have like their little moments, it was just super fun to see. And I think that the story took some turns that I didn't think that it would take, which was very fun to play through. It feels kind of more like an anniversary game than an actual real next Fire Emblem game, but I think that they're going to take many of the elements of this game, many of the good things about this game, and apply it to the next major Fire Emblem game, or even for the rumored Fire Emblem 4 remake that should be coming maybe sometime this year. We have to wait and see on that. But Fire Emblem Engage had so much cool stuff to it. I think that the Somniel and being able to play some of the online modes and different things that they have there are pretty fun. I think it was cool to kind of go through and be able to collect all these different heroes. But to me, the combat and the different classes and what you can do in the gameplay, strategy RPG perfected, was just so much fun, despite how weird Alaire's hair might be for some people out there. So Fire Emblem Engage, absolutely one of the big top 30 JRPGs that you should check out on the Nintendo Switch. But I want to get into the next game here that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles 2 plus Torna the Golden Country. I want to tell you guys something, because as somebody who has covered the Nintendo Switch since the beginning and well before it even launched, this is the type of game that you needed to get certain people to jump on. We were looking at stuff like Persona, stuff like Nier. There was all these really cool JRPGs that were not on the Nintendo Switch at the time. So JRPG fans, we needed something. And this was definitely that big game in the first year of the Nintendo Switch that came out that solidified that, okay, things are going to be okay. We've got this big JRPG that we can play. It's a lot of fun. It does a lot of cool things. Not perfect, but it doesn't need to be, because JRPGs inherently have this quirkiness and this weirdness to them, and a lot of them that some people love and some people hate. But I love what Xenoblade Chronicles 2 did. The blade system can be very fun. I think that having the chain attacks and all the different stuff that you can do in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a ton of fun. And the story is freaking phenomenal. I love the story. One of the best stories ever told in JRPGs and just gaming, period, hands down, if you really get into it and understand what the characters are doing. And I think it can teach you a lot about life overall and how to look at things from a worldview, even though their world is very different from our world. And I love the expansion with that as well. Torna was phenomenal, one of the best games, and I think that the combat in Torna is actually better than the base game, because they strip away a lot of the annoying elements of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and really focus in on what's great. And I love the Vanguard system, being able to switch between the blade and the driver at any time and even get special effects when you do at certain times was great. And just playing as Jin and playing as Mithra all the way back then, and all the different people that she dealt with at that time, oh my gosh, it's just so great. And even just seeing what happened, I mean, it's a somber story, but it's also a great told story. So these two games together form an incredible type of experience that I feel really made the Nintendo Switch even be more successful, despite it not selling 10 million copies plus. It didn't need to. It got the hardcore JRPG fans to give it a shot, which was a snowball effect overall. So Xenoblade Chronicles 2 plus Torna the Golden Country, incredible big JRPG to play on the Nintendo Switch. But now I want to get into Monster Hunter, because Monster Hunter Rise is another one of those games that truly showed people, all right, Switch is serious about JRPGs, serious about big Japanese games. Monster Hunter has been a staple on Nintendo platforms, but you got to remember, Monster Hunter Rise came out in 2018, so people have been waiting for a brand new Monster Hunter game to be on Nintendo platforms and not an older port like they had with Generations or some of the other ones that were on there. So when Monster Hunter Rise launched in 2021, it was a revolution to me. I've never been a huge Monster Hunter guy. I've played previous ones, but never really been big into it. But Monster Hunter Rise got me into it. I love the Palamutes. I love the little wire bug thing. I love the new weapons that you can have. I love the style of the game. I love the online multiplayer. All of that was done incredibly well. Monster Hunter Rise, still to this day, if you check out Monster Hunter Rise plus the Sunbreak expansion, you're getting yourself a lot of content and some world-class online multiplayer when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, at least. I don't think there's a better multiplayer game in terms of how it runs and how it behaves and the features and the options than Monster Hunter Rise on the new NPLN online system that Nintendo has. So I highly recommend Monster Hunter Rise. I think it's great. It's one of the best RPGs on the platform. Highly recommend it. Check it out. There's a weapon for you. The graphics look great. Hunting monsters by yourself or online with randoms is fun as well. So I highly recommend Monster Hunter Rise plus the Sunbreak expansion. All right, guys. Next up, I want to talk about a game that I never did this before, okay? Pokemon Legends Arceus. I've never done this before for any game, but this is the game that I actually had to make like an Australian account for and to get the Australian credits so I can play it as soon as possible. And that's what I did. I mean, I still bought the physical copy. here when it came out, but I really wanted to play this game, and it really fulfilled most of my thoughts of what Pokemon could be evolved a bit more, because Pokemon Legends Arceus has so many dope features, and it's so good they're making another one. Pokemon Legends ZA is coming out in 2025. And I think that this has birthed something incredible, because all of the cool things in this game as a single player focused Pokemon game, it's stuff that you really can't do in the other types of games. And that's what I love about Pokemon, or that's what I love about Pokemon Legends Arceus, is the fact that you can kind of go into the tall grass, you can catch Pokemon, you know, get the Pokeball, throw it at them, and catch them when they're not looking, and it gives you a better opportunity. Great HD Rumble support with that as well. But also the combat system, they took some chances and did some new different things, like with the speed style and the power style, and having it to where you could maybe not get a turn and you have to wait a couple, and then you can do a more powerful attack or get multiple attacks in. You can really fine tune your Pokemon to how you want to fight. Now, to me, I know that some people felt there was a lack of content in the game, at least post-game content, but I put like 70 hours into it when it comes to just the regular game, catching all the different Pokemon, going to the different areas or biomes and all of that. And I think that it was a perfect first type of experimental Pokemon game. And it was great because now they're making another one. So Pokemon Legends had also a very surprisingly awesome story. And it kind of reminded me of how much fun I had with the story, like in Pokemon Black and White 2. I think those were some of the best stories in Pokemon games. And Pokemon Legends Arceus kind of reminded me of that. So absolutely, Pokemon Legends Arceus, try it out. I know there's Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I know there's Pokemon Sword and Shield. Those are sold better, and those are going to be the bigger games. And those are great, too. Those are big JRPGs that you guys can check out, too. But to me, Pokemon Legends Arceus is something that's going to start something else later that could become just as big as the mainline series if they play their cards right. Now let's get into the next game here that is a big RPG series, and that is Nier Automata, the End of Yura edition. And I don't think anybody thought that this was going to be as good as it was when it comes to the port. Visually speaking, it's actually running at a little bit better resolution than the PlayStation 4 version at times. And when it comes to the performance of the game, while there are some dips here and there, overall, it's pretty good. And the combat is incredible in this game. This is a Platinum Games developed title. You guys know Platinum. We talked about Astral Chain. Obviously, Bayonetta is one of their staples out there. But they've created some of the best action games of all time. And this RPG is fantastic, and you're gonna get your money's worth with this game, guys. It is a AAA ported RPG, and it's got so many different endings that you can go through that are just crazy. And once you do one ending, you want to see what happens for the rest, and you want to play through it, and there's so much incentive to replay it. One of my favorite things about Platinum Games titles is that they put everything in the base game. They don't have to do DLC and all that because they put all of the DLC or whatever they thought they were going to do for it in the base game. And this game is no exception to that. There's so much content, and it's a ton of fun to play through, especially going through multiple times. But I love the combat in the game. I think the combat is one of the best action RPG systems out there. I love 2B and the character and what you can do with her as well, the different weapons that you can get, how she levels up, how things progress in the game, and the locations are also beautiful to go through as well. So Nier Automata, the End of Your edition, absolutely big JRPG, must-buy JRPG that you guys got to check out on the system if you haven't done so already. Next up, I want to talk about Persona 4 Golden. This one's a must-buy because to me, this is one of the best JRPGs with so few flaws. Persona 4 Golden, I can't really pinpoint a ton of things wrong with it. I mean, you could talk about the visuals maybe a bit. It's a PS Vita game. That was a PS2 game. Okay, understandable. But it makes up for that when it comes to the combat and the depth. It's got so much stuff in this game. The leveling systems, the social links, what you can do, the pacing of the game, the content in there. Persona 4 Golden absolutely is one of those games that you should try out. Persona 4 Golden, check it out if you haven't already done so. Next up, I want to talk about a strategy RPG. We talked about Fire Emblem Engage, but now you know we have to talk about Fire Emblem Three Houses. This is by far one of the best strategy RPGs I've ever played, and very much like Nier Automata with its multiple paths and all that give it replay value and content. Fire Emblem Three Houses is just like that. It's got a really cool battle system, class system, to where you can kind of break the game in multiple different types of ways once you figure out what skills and abilities are good, but it's still so much fun to go through and play. It's got multiple difficulty levels, so if you do need to adjust that, it's got the casual and classic options, so if you want your units to die permanently, you can definitely do that as well. But I think that Fire Emblem Three Houses for me has the tone and style that you just love to see in a Fire Emblem game. At first seems kind of cheerful and bright, but then it goes down. And then it goes down later. It becomes incredibly dark overall. And depending on how you see things, I think that's how you're going to see each path and what the characters do in each path. So that's what I loved about the game, but also just the strategy RPG gameplay. It's always just as fun as ever. It's fun to strategize, move through on the grid, pick your different units, and go through and fight, defeat bosses and enemies, and have just a great story surrounding it, and a lot of fun as well. I think that the base area that you do have is very good. The different stuff that you can do to kind of spend time with your units or do other types of things, assign them tasks. But if you just want to automize it, you can, because you're a teacher there. So you can just automize it and just kind of go through. Has a calendar system, a lot of different unique things in this game, a lot of different ways and styles to play. It was a pretty massive undertaking for Intelligent Systems and of course Koei Tecmo, who did a lot of the heavy lifting with that game. Fire Emblem Three Houses, go out there and play it. What are you waiting for? But I want to talk about another game that came out in 2024 that wasn't on my previous list with best RPGs, and that is Unicorn Overlord. This is kind of like an evolution of what we've seen from many different strategy games and how it plays out. You have your characters on the map, you go through, and then once they get into a battle, they kind of lock in and it just plays out. You don't necessarily have to tap a bunch of buttons or anything like that. And it's oddly addictive as heck. This is easily one of the best modern strategy RPG games that I've ever played. It's got that signature vanillaware art style that we all know and love, and it's got the combat and depth for you to just say, man, I just want to keep playing this game. Now, I've sunk a ton of time into it, and I still got to play it more, but it's easily, even not at this point, one of the best RPGs, JRPGs to play on the platform. But I think that the music and everything that kind of surrounds it with the combat really makes the experience whole. You've got to experience it. There's even a demo on the eShop that you can go check out, and it transfers over. So you can play that for free, and it transfers over to the main game. So love that about Unicorn Overlord, and I love what they've done overall, like with the combat system. There's so many unique things that you can do, how you position your units in the front or the back, how they use your skills, what activates. It's like there's endless combinations. It's almost like it's too much at times, but you can play it very simplistically if you want to. Multiple different difficulty levels as well, plus the story's just awesome. Like always, Vanillaware does great stories overall, Vanillaware and Atlas. So yeah, absolutely recommend Unicorn Overlord. Now, let's get into another game, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. This is still a title that more people need to play. I think I'm going to keep on talking about JRPGs until more people play Xenoblade Chronicles. Improved visuals, you've got quality of life features, and of course, the ability to play it anywhere that you want, which for a game like this is very important because this game is freaking long, man. Like Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is a long game. Even if you don't do the side quests, you're still looking at a good, if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, if you know what you're doing, maybe faster. But man, if you're just playing for the first time, you're looking at like 60, 70 hours maybe plus. There is a casual mode in the game, which makes it a lot easier. But even myself, as someone who beat the original, I got kind of slept at the final boss because I wasn't high enough level, even leveling up, I think to like level 75 or 76. I was getting bodied at times. Then I just switched up my strategy in terms of what characters to put in and some of my different skills and all that. But that's what makes the game great. You switch up a couple different things here and there if you're having trouble, and all of a sudden you can completely turn the tides. But I think that what makes Xenoblade Chronicles great is the story in the game, how it connects. We talked about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, how it connects to that. And man, when you learn about both of them, and like your mind's kind of blown overall. But the cast of characters are great. Shulk's obviously incredible. But the gameplay, the hook with this game, with seeing the visions and all that, is what really makes it really fun to play through. And just the locations, the massive size of the game is just also phenomenal, especially for a Wii game, and it looks even better here on the Nintendo Switch. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, what are you waiting for? That is the game to start with. I always get that question, what should I start with first? Well, start with the first game. That's called Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Now let's get into another title here that was made by about one person with some help here and there, and that is Chained Echoes. Fantastic turn-based RPG that tries to do things a little bit differently, and it does a very good job at it. You have ground combat with your weapons and your different characters and your classes, but then you also have mech combat as well. With the pacing of the story and how they kind of try to flip the JRPG on its head. It's not made by a Japanese person, but clearly it's modeled after old school Japanese RPGs, and I love that about the game. I think it's a lot of fun to play through, and I think that when you're playing the game and when you're using the different shared pool and the combat system, you really start getting into it, and it's a lot of fun to strategize. But all the different enemies in the game are strategically placed for you to run into the battles. It's not like you're just getting a bunch of enemies flying at you here and there. So I thought that was pretty cool how they paced it out to not get super grindy or anything like that. So Chained Echoes, absolutely a smaller name game, but has big gameplay value overall on the Nintendo Switch. Buy it. It's a must-buy title. Next up, let's talk about Octopath Traveler 2. We talked about the first game. First game's great, but the second game takes everything the first game did and says, yeah, this is way better. Octopath Traveler 2, new cast of characters. There was most recently an update that actually lets you go back and fight the Octopath 1 characters once you've done everything. But what I like about the combat system in this game, they take the same Light Bravely default system, and then they also add in other stuff like the latent abilities, the latent powers that give you a little bit of an edge in battle and make things a bit more unique for each character. But I also love the art style. This is the best, absolute best HD 2D graphics and art that we've seen in any of the HD 2D games. There are a number of them on the Nintendo Switch, and this is the best one. It just looks phenomenal in play, and it's a game that's a long title and it has random encounters, so portable play is going to be something that I'd highly recommend for something like this, because it just kind of gets wearing playing it on the TV all the time. I think it's a very fun game to play, you know, just kind of have something else on and also play it as well, grind through a little bit too, because there's some secret areas and different things that you're going to have to be high level for. Some bosses that are going to kick your butt if you don't know what you're doing. But I think overall with the story, they do a better job of intertwining it as well. That was one of the big negatives with Octopath 1, is that the characters don't necessarily interact in the stories, whereas now they actually have interactive stories with Octopath Traveler 2. Not quite completely intertwined with everybody's characters, but definitely better than what Octopath Traveler 1 was. So highly recommend Octopath Traveler 2 as a big JRPG to play, must buy. But I want to talk about another HD 2D. How many HD 2D games do we have on here? Triangle Strategy. This is a game that I love that could be getting a sequel, maybe. Maybe we could be getting a sequel soon for this title. But Triangle Strategy takes a strategy RPG. It doesn't have as much depth as maybe Fire Emblem Engage or Fire Emblem Three Houses, but it's still super fun to play. And I think that the story in the game and the quality of life features that they've done to make you remember the characters and like how important salt is. I never knew how important salt is, but man, they will teach you how important salt is in this game. But I love the kudo system, man. The battling is so much fun in here. And I think that the quality of life of the encampment, being able to essentially upgrade whenever you want, right before battles, after battles, in between, after you do like a little story segment, whatever it is, that was such a great addition to the game. And if you're playing on the harder difficulty like I did, you're gonna have to use that encampment to make sure that everything is good. So I love that about this game, but the story was great too. You have all these different decisions that you can make, and I like that it's just not like, okay, pick an option. It's like, okay, you have to actually convince your other teammates, hey, this is what we should do. You have to search, you have to find out clues, you have to do different things before you make the big decision. And those were always very tense when it comes down to it, but I love doing it. And the ending was interesting as well, the different type of endings that you can get. The golden ending was elusive. Who knows what they're gonna go with, actually, like, let's say a canon ending for the game. But yeah, these are all things that you will get enthralled in if you try it out. More people need to play the game. Did well at the beginning, but we haven't gotten any sales updates, so check out Triangle Strategy. Phenomenal SRPG, JRPG on the Nintendo Switch. Now let's get into another remake, and that is Super Mario RPG. This game was just so fun to go through. Now, it's not as good as Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. It's not, because this is the origin of it. But Super Mario RPG is so good. The writing, once again, somehow, it's like from like 1996 or whatever. It still holds up. It's still really good and fun to go through. I laughed out loud many times, even with Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, but also with Super Mario RPG. I laughed so much with this game, and it's a lot of fun. It's a bit light when it comes to the depth. There isn't a ton of things, but they actually made it more in depth. You can switch between your reserve party members at any point, and they have the new triple team attacks as well. Plus, after you beat the game, there is extra boss fights. There's extra boss fights where you refight, and they're way tougher, way different gimmicks than before. So I did love that about the game. The graphics are charming. The music is fantastic. You can switch between the original and the new remix music. Same thing with Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. So I loved it, man. I think Super Mario RPG is a fantastic game, and it's selling incredible. I think they're gonna go back to having the Mario RPG console experience with leveling and experience, all that stuff that people want. Super Mario RPG started it. I was there back then when it first started. I'm here 20 something plus years later to enjoy the game again. But yeah, I really loved it. And yeah, Gino's cool, Mallow's awesome. Bring those characters back. But yeah, it was cool to go back and play this game. So if you have not played Super Mario RPG, I highly recommend it. Okay, we are jumping into some Sea of Stars at this point, guys. This is another must-buy big JRPG, which is not necessarily a JRPG in terms of it was made by a Japanese studio, but the style is clearly trying to emulate some of the best Japanese RPGs out there, like Chrono Trigger, for example. That was a game that so many people brought up, myself included, that it tries to do, which it does have a lot of elements of Chrono Trigger, but also have some active battle elements like Super Mario RPG. So I think that that's what makes Sea of Stars really cool. It's got a great story with a ton of different combinations for endings. Chrono Trigger was absolutely known for that. There's a lot of little things that you don't think are a big deal at the time, but end up being a big deal, like a Chrono Trigger. It's got a really crazy story that you didn't expect to happen, kind of like Chrono Trigger as well. So while it's not as good as Chrono Trigger, and Chrono Trigger absolutely needs to be on the Nintendo Switch, I don't know what they're waiting for on that one, Sea of Stars is still a great experience in its own right. And I think that it's so good when it comes to the combat. The music is really good. The art style's good enough overall. Not super in love with it, but I do like what they were going for, if that makes sense. Sea of Stars, check it out if you haven't already done so. There's physical copies available. There's digital copies available. Definitely buy it if you can on Switch. All right, let's talk about Final Fantasy IX, another classic RPG. Final Fantasy IX, we've talked about other classic RPGs on this video already. Final Fantasy IX to me might be the epitome of what Square Enix's classic PS1 era is, or was. They took all the great things that they learned from other JRPGs that they've made over the years, Final Fantasy games that they made, because remember, Final Fantasy 7 to 9, they all came out within like a span of like 3 to 4 years. So it was pretty crazy to see exactly what this game did. It was really nuts, and Final Fantasy IX to me has one of the best battle systems and world building. The world building and battle system is fantastic in this game. They cut out a lot of the kind of sketchy stuff from Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 8 and added in a bunch of cool features that people still love. And once again, just like Final Fantasy 7 on the Switch, you get a little bit of the updated version with the quality of life and everything. So to me, Final Fantasy IX, which is rumored to be getting a remake that's going to come out on multiple platforms here, I still think that the original is super fun and good to play. We'll see if that happens. I think it will, though. So Final Fantasy IX, check it out. It's a big JRPG from the yesteryear that absolutely deserves a play, especially with the portable play on the Nintendo Switch. Now, next up, we're going to talk about Dragon Quest XI-S Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition and how bad the music is. No, I'm joking, guys. Listen, I'm not in love with the music, but the gameplay is fantastic. This is old school RPG with a few different twists in here. Got yourself a nice skill tree, got yourself some cool characters, got yourself some great voice acting, great graphics. One of the best looking games easily when it comes to JRPGs on the Nintendo Switch. Unreal Engine 4. There's a lot of really good things about Dragon Quest XI's, and the story takes these crazy turns that you would have never thought. And if you're looking for a game with content, this game has it. There's so much content in this game. It's almost like it's too much, and post-game content as well. But you're going to want to do it. Once you're in that deep, you're like, all right, I got to go out and see everything else that this game has to offer. I know I had to do that for myself. So Dragon Quest XI's with this fantastic combat system, great graphics, great music for those who like that style of music, and also incredible pacing and overall flow. Dragon Quest, absolutely one of the big JRPGs that you have to play on the Switch if you can. Just like a lot of these other games, like I've talked about, the portability play really helps out here when you have to grind through for different things. So I recommend Switch version if you can. Alright guys, we're moving into the next game here, and that is Persona 5 Royal. This is a fantastic JRPG that proves that people still want that silky smooth turn-based combat, but also you can do different things that makes the game feel super fast, but also has the depth that you love with having a turn-based combat style. I think that Persona 5, when you look at like the aesthetics of it, it's so pleasing to the eye, and all the different things that you can do, and the writing and everything, it makes you just want to keep playing because they keep giving you new options and abilities, and you keep on getting different social links, you keep on having different scenarios that you're under, you keep on just doing different things. So it becomes a game that once you start playing, it sucks you in. And there's so many different elements to the game as well. You have the mementos where you go and fight, you have the palaces as well, you have the social links. It's tiered in different ways to where if you get tired of one thing, you can kind of do something else, but you need to kind of do all the different things in order to get through the game. So you have to come back around to it at some point. But it's also got very likable characters and characters that you want to hate as villains, especially in the palace. I think they did an exceptional job, especially with the first one with Kamoshida and all of that. That was a great introduction to how twisted the world can be in this game. So I love Persona 5 Royal. Absolutely one of the staples on the Nintendo Switch at this point in terms of big must-buy JRPGs, and it's one of those titles that if you haven't checked it out yet, play it on the Nintendo Switch. It's portable. They did a good enough job with the quality of the port as well. All right, and the final big 30 game here must-buy is Xenoblade Chronicles 3 plus Future Redeemed. Listen, I've talked about this game a lot, but of course, if you're someone who hasn't listened, or if you made it all the way up to this point, this is a must-play JRPG. This is a must-buy, must-play JRPG. I think that if you go through the adventures of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, this is such a satisfying redemption for overall with everything with Takahashi and his team. I think that this, when it comes to Future Redeemed in particular, but even with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, is the most refined battle system that they've ever done. And pacing wise is probably, not even probably, is the best that they've ever done. Going through and playing the game, they cut out a lot of the nonsense when it comes to side quests and the blade systems and things that were kind of annoying in Xenoblade Chronicles 1. They took care of that. The combat is just as in-depth, and it's a lot of fun. Removing the blades from Xenoblade 2 and adding in the heroes, but also having a pacing to where when you earn things in the game, when you do side quests, they sometimes feel like main quests. And actually some of them are really kind of main quests, but they phrase them as side quests. So it just feels more satisfying, rewarding, actually exploring the map and going through. But to me, the combat is really what shines in this game. Future Redeemed in particular was so great because not only did you get a resolution to what happened in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and what happened in the series, but then you also get a resolution kind of like overall with other games, and it was just mind-blowing to see. The music is so good in both of them. Future Redeemed is, of course, the expansion to Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and the music was just great. It was super cool to see Shulk and Rex come back from Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 in this game. It was like a fan's dream overall. but I love the combat refinements in Future Redeemed. I think that the quality of life options, being able to categorize everything, know how much you've got in a certain area, and the skill tree that they set up in that game was just great. But even like the Uroburos, that was fun too. It has its own gimmicks between Future Redeemed and Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and both of them were really fun, playing as fusioned real Uroburos, and then also playing as the start of it, just the beginning, to where they can't quite really get it to where it was in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 because it wasn't refined at the time. So that was great to see. You need to play them in tandem. It's not like one or the other. It's like you got to play both of them to me. But if you do, and you combine that with the other Xenoblade games, it becomes, to me, the greatest story told in JRPGs overall. And that's why, to me, it's one, if not the top, of the big 30 must-buy games on the Nintendo Switch as a JRPG. But what are your thoughts overall, guys, when it comes to everything with the JRPGs that we talked to? What are some games that you'd love to hear me talk about more in terms of big JRPGs that are must-buys on the platform? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch and RPG videos right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.